This is Little Miss Curious by Roger Hargreaves, especially recorded for Iris and Harry. Little Miss Curious. Little Miss Curious is a very curious sort of person. Just look at her house. It's a very curious shape, isn't it? What shape does it look like? Now look at her garden. That's curious too, isn't it? It's that same shape. Now look at Little Miss Curious. She's looking rather curious looking too. She also has a very curious nature. She wants to know the how, the why, and the what of everything. Why? One day Little Miss Curious set off to town. Why do doors squeak? But they are not small. And fairy with pink ears and long tails? She asked the door. She went out. Understandably, the door didn't answer. Why do flowers live in the beds but never sleep? She asked the flowers in her garden. They just smiled knowingly. Then she saw a worm. Why do worms in Nonsense Land wear bow ties? She asked. That's for me to know, and you to find out about, said the worm, laughing. Later on the way to town, Little Miss Curious met Mr. Nonsense. Are you curious to find out what she asked him? Well, go on then. Turn over. I wonder what it'll be. What do you think she's asked him? I'm curious, began Little Miss Curious, to know why is it that sandwiches are called sandwiches but don't have any sand in them. It just so happens, said Mr. Nonsense, that this is a sand sandwich and I'm rather partial to sand. Sand sandwiches are very crunchy. Happy Christmas, he said. Then Mr. Nonsense ran away, holding his sandwich carefully so that the sand didn't fall out. And it's not even Christmas. Little Miss Curious eventually arrived in town. Did I hear you ask why? Well, you are curious as well, aren't you? But are you as curious as Little Miss Curious? Little Miss Curious had gone to town to visit the library. I wonder, would you be able to help me, she asked. Of course, said Mrs. Page, the librarian. What are you looking for? I'm looking for a book, began Little Miss Curious. A book that will tell me why the sky is blue. And why combs have teeth and can't bite, and why chairs have legs that can't play football, and why... And she went on and on and on and on until there was a very long queue behind her, and it was growing longer by the minute. What a curious tale this is. Oh, Mrs. Page does not look happy. That's enough, cried Mrs. Page. Next, please. But why? Little Miss Curious began to ask. Why? But without quite knowing how or why, she suddenly found herself out on the street. How curious, Little Miss Curious thought to herself. As she walked along the street, Little Miss Curious asked herself, why is everybody giving me such a curious looks, and why is Little Miss Careful waving an umbrella at me? Is it because it's going to rain? We don't think so, do we? No. Little Miss Curious ran off. Are you going to ask why? Are you becoming as curious as Little Miss Curious? Can you guess where she ran off to? Neither can I. Come back, Little Miss Curious, and tell us where you're going. You see, we're all ever so curious. You really are. Oh, that was good. Can you think of some really good questions that you've asked today that have helped you learn lots of things?